Tenets were around good governance, transparency, accountability, and active public participation. By training, Chair, I'm an accountant by training. I also am a leadership and governance expert. My PhD is in leadership and governance. I am a professional with a strong background in management and administration. So the combination of James Orengo and William Oduol for Siaya County, we believed was going to catapult or accelerate development in that particular county. Looking at James Orengo's fine legal mind and William Oduol, this global business leader, those two leaders brought together, the people of Siaya believed, and I still believe, was the perfect combination to take Siaya to greater heights. When we started chair and committee, we started very well. And in the first 3 months, James Orengo, and in his defense, identified the unique competencies and skills that I have around finance and operations. And using his own discretion, decided to delegate some of the finance responsibilities to me. So in the month of October, the 6th, last year, he did appoint Mr. Jack Odinga as acting Chief Officer Finance, and in that appointment letter also delegated the finance responsibility to me. And one of the statements that he made on that particular letter was that besides Jack Odinga reporting to the Minister for Finance, the CECM Finance, he was also expected to give me briefings on a weekly basis or as frequently as was required. So the first 3 months, when we started with Governor James Orengo, we started very well. And one of my mandates, given my background, was to institute robust and strong internal controls, particularly around finance, Chair, because that's really where the county was hemorrhaging. Siaya County had been in the press for all the wrong reasons. You know, theft of 600 million, 400 million, the year 2021, 2022, Siaya County lost 1 billion, and over the 2 years, Siaya County lost 2 billion. Chair and committee, these are evidenced. We have now Kenya National Audit report. We also had the uhuru report and the internal audit report that confirmed those particular data points that I'm talking about. Now, towards the end of November, Chair, towards the end of November, Chair and committee, I noticed during the periodic weekly briefings that Jack Odinga, the acting CFO, was giving me, I noticed during some of my briefings with him, abnormally huge withdrawals from Impressed. And so I summoned him to my office and I asked him why we were making huge withdrawals from Impressed. Now, Impressed, Chair and committee, is allowed by Public Finance Management Act. The PFM Act allows counties through accounting officers to open Impressed accounts. However, there is restriction to the limit to how much you can withdraw from Impressed account. Because generally, most transactions for audit trail are supposed to pass through IFMIS, because that way you are able to track and establish the reasonableness of the spend. But when you transfer money from, say, a revenue account, recurrent account, to imprest, then you lose your audit trail. So ideally, imprest is petty cash. It's for emergency. And so if you're withdrawing 200, 300,000 from imprest account, that is okay. But in instances where you're withdrawing 1 million, 2 million, in the case of Siaya County, 5 million, 6 million, sometimes 10 million, that is not impressed. That would generally pass for normal business operations. And as a consequence, Chair and committee, that ideally should be passing through IFMIS. Now, when I summoned Jack Odinga to my office and I asked him where all these withdrawals were going to, because they were abnormal and were huge and were happening in very close frequencies, every 2 to 3 days, 2 million here, 3 million there, 6 million there. And Chair and committee, it would also interest you to note that these withdrawals, one junior officer would be sent to the bank on one particular day. A junior officer, one individual, walks to the bank and withdraws 4, 5, 6 times. 900,000, 950,000, circumventing the central bank requirement of 1 million. Because if you're withdrawing more than 1 million, then you need to, of course, have documentation and show where the money is going to. So basically, what Siaya County would do in a bid to withdraw 5, 6, 4 million, they would send one junior officer. Presumably, this junior officer would go to the bank and in the morning say 8 or 9 o'clock, withdraw 900. 11 o'clock, another 900. 2 o'clock, another 900. In a day, one junior officer, 5 million, 6 million. The question I ask, if these are legitimate business expenditure, why wouldn't you just write one check for 1 million and state the reason? And that officer just goes to the bank once and withdraws the money. So when I invited Jack Odinga to explain to me, Chair and committee, he was initially cagey. Then I threatened that I was going to invite EACC. And then he confessed to me that he would draw this money and take to the governor, Governor James Orengo. I was not convinced. So I decided.
Point of order.
Yes, Senior Counsel Mukeni.
Chair, you know, we have rules of procedure, and I expected the governor to make his opening remarks that will target his response to the accusations that are facing him. But what I've heard for the last 10 minutes, he is making a speech that does not relate to the allegations that are facing him. So, and also, I think he's a senior citizen. He knows that some adverse remarks cannot be made against persons who are not in these proceedings to defend themselves. So, Chair, you need to guide the witness to restrict himself to the allegations that are facing him and that are relevant to the proceedings that we are having this morning. Chair.
Onyonga, please.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with what Senior Counsel Mogeni has said. The other issue that I wanted to bring to the attention of the DG and maybe your counsel is that the Senate will accept either reports that have been presented by statutory bodies like OAG, like EACC, and the DCI. If you have such information and you have tabled it here and it's available, please note that information so that we are able to read and understand what you're saying. Because right now, you're talking about corruption issues. I know that the presentation that kind of framework, but if that is really what you want to do, wouldn't it be more beautiful if you can actually respond to the issues that he has alleged against you.
Manso.
Yeah, Chair, just on an issue of procedure, the Deputy Governor is a witness in these proceedings, and instead of making up any remarks, he's already giving evidence. So is he then not subject? Is he not then subject for cross-examination, although he's giving evidence at the wrong time? Because I believe there will be his own time to come and defend himself.
Good. DG and your council, what I want you to do is to withdraw the name of Orengo, because we are not discussing the governor of Shillings. Later on, when you sit there as a witness, and it is in record, and you also have, it's in your response, that is the time you can mention his name. Odinga is, at least is part of the witnesses that we are going to interrogate later on. So what I want you to do, focus on your charges. And then save time, because the way you're going, your counsel is unlikely to have any opportunity to have a preliminary submission. So you would have given him an opportunity, and then later on, because what you are saying, you'll have all your time to submit. So please, let's focus. Let's not make very wild allocations that are not what. Later on, we will interrogate you on that. Please. Yes, Councillor.
Chairman, that unfortunately is the extent of the Deputy Governor's defense. In his defense and in his response, he states categorically that according to him, these issues started before the timeline that was set out in Mr. Willis Otieno's submission. Mr. Willis Otieno took all the time that he required to allege that my client is seated on a throne and nobody interrupted him. My client is merely giving context to his response, and whatever he's saying is in his response. And what he pleads for is an opportunity to use his 40 minutes and to make his opening statement. His truth is different from that of the county assembly, and I believe he's entitled to say.
Proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I went and tried to inquire with Governor, and Governor said that he was not receiving the money. And he's my governor, so I did not put him under a lot of task. But I knew, Chair and committee, that since I had already brought it to his attention, if he was doing it, at least that was would act as a deterrent. So this continued to the month of December. I saw, again through Impressed, over 40 million withdrawn. And in, Chair, in record 3 months between November to January, more than 100 million had been withdrawn through Impressed. I noticed in January our relationship, because Governor and I used to have a fairly tight relationship. We would consult virtually every day. But after I confronted him, I noticed that he was disengaging. And January timeframe, our communication lines had basically reduced, significantly reduced. Now, Chair and committee, the final nail in the coffin, and the reason I decided to go to the public, because I'm giving context so that you understand how the Assembly, the General Oversight Committee, invited me. The final nail in the coffin was sometime in February this year. A governor, without consultation, as was the practice, and against his own minister's professional advice, the Minister for Finance, appointed particular individuals, reshuffled finance, and returned individuals that were under investigation by EACC to their original positions. Individuals that were under investigation for the theft of 600 million and 400 million, and we will be demonstrating this later on over the next 2 days.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Honorable Chair.
Yes, Catherine.
I think colleagues raised earlier, is the governor on trial in this matter? I have read documents, the documents prior, and I think the DG is actually not responding to the charges against him.
So, DG, you know, I'd said let's just give without mentioning the governor, please, so that you are raising a lot of unnecessary interruptions.
I'm guided, Chair.
Yeah, please. So
Okay.
Point of order.
Yes, Abbas.
I think it's inappropriate for the DG to invoke the name of the governor every time.
Okay.
And it's actually not going back to, I mean, this is the case we're handling. And it's talking so much of management issues and what has been happening between him and the IG, and the DG, sorry, the governor. So I think I want him to come back to the courthouse here, to the Senate.
Miraj, please.
Chair, I'm asking whatever the DG submitting in, is it in his response that we have with us? No, just a minute. Let him.
Yes, it is.
Through the
Yes,
chair.
it is, Chair. It is in my response.
Which document?
You mentioned,
Which page?
you mentioned
Yes.
the governor's name in your response?
Yes, I have.
Which page? We have to make reference because we should not submit new.
Yeah, you know, in this particular state also, I had said earlier that we are just doing it generally.
Yeah.
So I wish the DG, what do you believe can bring some issues at this stage? You could restrict yourself so that at the right time, you focus on that.
My chair.
Yes, Miraj?
I think it is fair enough if whatever context is bringing is in the documents that we have, he should be let to tell why we are here today. He should be left to bring his case, to build his case. It is not fair for him to be stopped now and now again. It's not fair. I heard the other members speaking and building their case. Let him be. If for sure whatever he's saying is in his response, then he should be let to be. Just not to mention the governor's name. If it will make some of us comfortable,
so Willis,
then we should not mention.
You know, these are 11 members. Out of these 11 members, we are all impartial. And since we're impartial, you know, Willis mentioned you because you are the one who is on the trial here. So for the governor, just you can mention an office. You don't have to mention by name. So that we move. Then now we'll give the county assembly now an opportunity where witnesses will be called. Members will now ask questions and interrogate. Then the opportunity will be tomorrow. Okay. Just give a general idea so that at least, you know, everybody understands really how you're going to defend yourself tomorrow.
Chair, I'm guided, but just to respond to the committee members' question,
You don't respond to any question for now.
Okay. All right. So the final nail in the coffin was the reshuffle that I just talked about, returning people that were under investigation by EACC back to their previous positions. And so when that happened, and I was not consulted, I decided to go to the electorate. And this is when I started talking about the theft and the misappropriation of finances in the executive. At that point in time, Chair, I was then invited, summoned by the Assembly, to go and explain the utterance, the political statements that I had made in some funeral. So on the 12th of April, I went to the Assembly with the evidence, with the hope that I was going to give my oral submission as I presented my written evidence. But the Assembly refused and asked me to submit my written evidence, which written evidence I submitted 2 days later. In my submission, I had mentioned some officers adversely. I expected the General Oversight Committee to seek responses from those officers that I had mentioned adversely, which they did. And I had also hoped that subsequently, once the officers responded, they were going to invite me to go and make rebuttals. Unfortunately, Chair, and this is something I have not understood, the General Oversight Committee never afforded me the opportunity to go and make rebuttals based on the responses that the officers had given them. Remember, I was the whistleblower. I am the one that raised aspects of theft, aspects of misappropriation from the executive. But the General Oversight Committee, on their own motion, decided to make a determination without affording me the opportunity, chair and committee, to go and respond to the officers' responses. So a determination was made on the 29th of May on the allegations or the summonses that they had made, and which determination mentioned that my allegations were not substantiated. Now, how was I going to substantiate if I was not given the opportunity to substantiate? And they also went ahead, the General Oversight Committee, in adopting the report of the committee, also made two recommendations. One, they censured me, and secondly, they asked me to, in future, ensure that I followed the internal grievance resolution mechanism. Nowhere, chair and committee, and this is the other important aspect, nowhere did they recommend impeachment against the person of the deputy governor. Now, the grounds and the facts that are before you, chair and committee, are similar to the same grounds and facts that was before the General Oversight Committee. What am I saying, chair and committee? I am saying that the assembly was in violation of my constitutional rights, particularly around the principle of double jeopardy. They seem to be trying me twice. Because on that 29th day of May, when the General Oversight Committee presented their report and adopted, that is the very day that Mheshimiwa Gordon Onguru brought up the impeachment motion against me. So if it pleases you, Chair and Committee, I would like the team to take note of that I seem to be tried twice. Chair, allow me to now read my opening statement, which will take me about 2-3 minutes, and then the remainder of the time I'll donate to my council. Mr. Chairman, and together with your team, let me convey my gratitude for granting me the opportunity to share the pains of this inquiry. My fidelity to the Constitution of Kenya is whole, complete, and total. Siaya County is the home of Kenya's foremost crusader for devolution, the former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga. But on the ground today, Siaya is very sick. The county is reeling from poverty. We are a national laughingstock. It is a pale shadow, Chair and Committee, of its glorious past as home of great leaders, statesmen, and women. Mr. Chairman and your committee, pettiness cannot be allowed to stand in the face of such overwhelming problems in the county, where children sleep hungry for lack of food, people die for lack of basic medicine, and youth drop out of school for lack of fees. This respectable House, this Senate, must save Siaya and salvage devolution from its deathbed. And I'm looking forward to the Senate being the impartial juror. Mr. Chair and your committee, you owe it to the people of Kenya to protect devolution, and particularly the seat of deputy governor. My case is not unique. We have seen from across the country wrangles between governors and their deputy. And I hope with these proceedings, we would be able to come up with resolutions that would hopefully address the wrangles that permeate across the county between governors and their deputies. Mr. Chairman, the nature of my impeachment at the county assembly level was narrow, ill-informed, limited, misguided, and choreographed to favor those abetting high crimes. I have been targeted simply because I am opposed to maladministration. I have challenged the status quo, chair and committee, and insisted on strict internal controls. I am the proverbial hunter that has become the hunted. The drawing of political lines informs and oils the motivation behind the impeachment motion against me. Throughout Siaya County and even among sons and daughters of Siaya living away from home, the prosecution and my subsequent impeachment at the county assembly has failed to ignite the passions of the whole community. Mr. Chairman, the impeachment criteria lacked basic tenets of democracy. The criteria betrays public trust, is full of assertions. The allegations in the articles of impeachment are very scandalous, vexatious, and frivolous. To the great people of Siaya County, freedom is coming home. Some of our forefathers who fought for liberation never lived to enjoy it. I am prepared to pay the ultimate price to defend your constitutional rights and privileges, especially the downtrodden lot in my county, the mamambogas, the bebas, and the border-borders. I shall at all times fight for you, for your freedom, and for that which is yours. I promise to never let cartels and their mandarins eat your money. Only in my death will they pilfer, steal, and expropriate your money. I am still committed to delivering our 9 points manifesto. I hope my good friend, my governor, is equally committed to delivering that manifesto. But even as we deliver these basic tenets that informed our coming to power must and will always be observed. Good governance, rule of law, transparency, and accountability, including, and very importantly, active public participation. Stay tuned over the next 2 days as we unpack the Siaya and the leadership that you should never elect, fellow countymen. As I conclude, Chair and the committee, I have every confidence in the Senate and indeed in this committee's ability to carry out an impartial review. We cannot, and I repeat, we cannot be talking of corruption at the national level, and this is important, and want to close our eyes and block our ears to corruption in Siaya. May justice be our shield and defender. May it be served unto the people of Siaya. God bless you, Chair, and your committee. God bless Siaya, and my very, very best. Thank you very much. Allow me then to now donate the remainder of my time to my council chair.
Good. You have about 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee. Just briefly, I wish to emphasize a few things that the Deputy Governor has said and expand on one or two important points of law. I wish to state at the outset of my opening statement that the Deputy Governor, as he appears before you this morning, during the rest of the day today and tomorrow, has nothing to prove. He enjoys a presumption of innocence. The duty to prove lays squarely on the shoulders of the County Assembly, his accusers, during this process, and it is for them to prove the lofty allegations that are contained in the motion of impeachment and that have been repeated during the opening statement by my good and learned friend this morning. Secondly, Chairman and members of the committee, we will be inviting you to conclude that what took place before the County Assembly of Siaya was a sham or a travesty. The proceedings before the County Assembly of Siaya were foreign to the Constitution. They are not proceedings that were envisaged by the Constitution, and they are not proceedings that can give forth any, that can bring forth any legitimate impeachment proceedings. We are glad that the Deputy Governor will have his opportunity to testify. He will speak his truth, and he will add substance to the submissions that I have made. The proceedings were against the basic tenets of natural justice. We will establish in our evidence, and we will establish in the process of testing the County Assembly's evidence, that the County Assembly had arrived at a conclusion. Let's get rid of the Deputy Governor. And they then worked backwards. That is not what the people of Kenya intended by impeachment proceedings. Impeachment proceedings must be objective, and they must be founded on law. It brings me conveniently to my next point. We urge the Senate, we urge this committee of the Senate to bear in mind the thresholds for impeachment. Impeachment has taken place a few times. Many motions of impeachment have come. Some have been successful here, others have not. The courts have had an opportunity to pronounce themselves as to what the thresholds for impeachment are. I'm glad to note that in the authorities that were presented to us this morning, many of those authorities exist. We urge this committee, when you retire, to consider your decision in this matter, to be guided by the law on the thresholds of impeachment. It is our position during the early stages of this hearing that none of the allegations or none of the articles of impeachment as framed by the County Assembly passes the threshold. There is no evidence. They are hollow allegations. We are glad to note, Mr. Bona Chairman, that your affirmation that you and your committee will be fair. And Chairman and members of the committee, you will appreciate the reason for our gratitude once you have an opportunity to examine in detail the proceedings that took place before the Siaya County Assembly. They were anything but fair, they were anything but objective, and we look forward to fairness and objectivity from this committee. I thank you very much for that opportunity.
Honorable members, it's now around 12:24, going to 12:30. And there is something that we need to dispense, especially on counter-checking the documents that were sent by email. But before we do that, I'm proposing that we take a 10 minutes break. 12:25, we reconvene at 12:35, so that at least, you know, members can stretch their legs, and there are also senior members here who can do other things. We adjourn until 12:35.
Tusirekodi. I don't know, tuchezeaje. Tunapata the opening remarks from both sides. Hata story kama imeanza kuiva. So hizi zingine zitakuwa tu hizo maribattles to which zile necessary. Usijaze kadi kwa tu haitatosha. Wanamaliza 6 minutes. Itakuwa wakati tu hivi. Wakidabria 5 to 8. Ndio nene nikataka kama nika straight kadi. Because I think the nini ya Willis na hii governor anakuja kumalizia, anasema anakuja kunemia, kuja ku it's the hunter now being the hunter. I don't think sasa hizi zingine think ni and then sasa not against how my witnesses not against witnesses
Mutalala wapi?
Ama sema ni leo hakuna link tunafanya sasa hivi.
Kuja tu ndio hivyo.
12:30 wamesema tu 12:35.
Ngapi? Jioni.
So by 12:40 kila mtu ameketi. Lakini nataka mimi niko.
Wacha hata nipanga takwambia. Because unajua sasa kijana pia ako shule. The next session is done. Because next session again is you are on a raise, you on a raise. So
Next session is county assembly sasa. Today is their day. Sasa ward of county assembly itapewa time ya kusubstantiate all the allegations made against. Unajua ameuliza akaambiwa na sogeza tamu watu wanakaa hapo wanakaa hapo kesho.
Lakini sasa hivi ndio wanaongelea para. Sasa najua kwa maana mimi unajua
Bana, unajua pale unapata kila mtu. Kawaida tukuje komiti hapa tunasomaga pale. Yes. Pale we get everyone. Unapata hawa.
Kulingana na siri yangu pale niliingia wale pale pekee.
Unajua kidogo saa 4 usiku.
Mimi nikifika saa 10 siku niko naangalia mara tatu na kufanya. Next session nikienda break nyingine ya pili ile around 4. Kwa nini? Sasa kwa leki ya zika mtu wanaanza kuweka hapa swali. Ndio amesema kusikia yangu kwa hivyo. Leo tena waweke pale mpaka asubuhi.
Sasa wanakuja hapa. Chai kwa wapi tuende tukule. Unajua unasimama hapa mpaka sikiza ngapi?
Bwana, kunywe chai cause una link one. Kunywe chai.
Hawezi fanya.
Wanarudi saa ngapi?
Sisi mpaka saa 8. Saa hii tu. Hapana.
Sote chakua live. Kunywe chai before warudi.
Kuja hapa, ona hata kuna space hapa. Kuja hapa.
Kwanza utapata picha nzuri ya.
Kuja hapa.
Wanaongea ni hawa hivi.
chini utapata picha mzuri sana. Ni pale wanakuja sasa hapo.
Kwa sasa hiyo wenye wanarudi
Hata hakuna haja. Nataka by extension kuwekea sasa.
extension. Hata extension yenyewe nataka ya kutumia simu. Kutumia simu kwa via.
Unajua nilikuwa naishiwa na card, nilikuwa na nisahau format. Niko na so lazima ni format. Ndio unataka testa. Nataka tukunywe chai tuanze tu.
Nataka kutumia mji wako niingie ndani hapo kidogo.
Ile cable. Ile cable ukianza kuiantangle mpaka press inaisha. Si untangle. Lakini si hiyo cable.
Wakikuja bado tuko na
just take a cup of tea and then move to the other side.
No, because we have been told
yes,
the next session watakuja hapa, so there's no need for us to go to the other side.
No, but you see the house, all the house should be covered.
Yeah?
You want only to cover one side. You know it's supposed to focus the chair.
Yes.
There's a way you do
From the back.
No, you see,
Haonekani akichea.
I thought you should have.
Is your camera facing one?
yes, you know, sometimes we're having so many committees. So, because of capacity, sometimes you find one camera deployed by media house. Like for example,